I hope you're doing well. Today, I'm sharing something very personal, incidents that happened to me, my husband, and my son, inside our own home. I got married in 2012, and a year later, in 2013, I moved to Germany to live with my husband. He was born and raised there, and his entire family lived in Frankfurt. Before I arrived, he had already rented a 2-bedroom apartment on the ground floor. His parents lived on the first floor, where they'd been living for many years, and he had rented the ground floor right after our marriage, expecting I'd join him. A year later, I came, and we started living in that same apartment. The first strange thing that happened to me in Germany were the dreams. The moment I arrived, I began having very weird dreams. Not exactly sleep paralysis, because I've experienced real sleep paralysis back in India, and this wasn't the same. But the feeling was similar. My hands and feet wouldn't move, I couldn't control my body, and I'd try to recite verses, but struggled. The dreams weren't of monsters or ghosts. No entity came in front of me. Instead, I would find myself alone in deserted places, empty roads, under strange daylight, completely silent, eerily still. The dreams always came at the same time, after my husband left for work in the morning, around 8 or 9 a.m., when the house was quiet and I would go back to sleep. These dreams continued for an entire year, until my son was born. I never associated them with anything paranormal. Even now, I tell myself it was probably because I missed India, my parents, and was adjusting to a new life. But one thing was strange. The side of the bed I used to sleep on, the one near the window, after my son was born, his cot didn't fit on that side, so my husband and I swapped sides. I moved to the other side, and he began sleeping where I used to sleep. That's when he began getting terrified in his sleep. I'd hear him making strange, scared sounds. I'd wake him up and he'd simply say, "Yeah, I got scared," but never shared what he saw. He's someone who has experienced a lot of paranormal things, but never talks about them. Ever since we switched sides, I stopped having the dreams, completely. I assumed it was because my son slept beside me and I didn't feel alone anymore. But then, when my son was 6 months old, my mother-in-law brought a toy, a basket with 2 little pats inside. When you wound it up, the cats would move gently and play a sweet melody. My son loved it, so I often wound it and placed it next to him. One night, while we were all asleep, the toy suddenly started playing continuously, nonstop, loud, without anyone touching it. I panicked and woke my husband. He was awake already, staying silent because he didn't want me to get scared. He immediately took the toy and returned it to his mother, saying, "Please keep it. It's playing by itself and my wife is scared." We removed it from the house, though deep down we knew the problem wasn't the toy. Something else was going on. Later, when my son was about 1 year and 9 months old and I was pregnant with my second child, something terrifying happened. I had gone upstairs to make rotis at my mother-in-law's place because food was usually cooked upstairs. My son loved climbing the stairs in those days and often went up on his own. That day, when I stepped out of my door, I saw the gate open. I assumed he had gone upstairs ahead of me, but when I asked my mother-in-law, she said he hadn't come up at all. I rushed back downstairs. I searched every corner of the house, every room, every cupboard, even the wardrobe, terrified that he might have crawled somewhere dangerous. He was nowhere. My in-laws also panicked. My father-in-law even ran outside, though the main building gate was so heavy that a small toddler couldn't possibly open it. We checked the rooftop, the terrace, everything. Nothing. Something made me think of the basement. The basement door was usually not locked, though it stayed closed. I ran there. 3 rooms were in the basement, 2 always locked, and 1 open where we kept bicycles. I called out his name. Silence. Then suddenly, I heard him laugh. There was a large iron drum placed tightly in the wall's corner, making a narrow triangular gap behind it, far too narrow for a toddler to slip into, But somehow, my baby was sitting behind that drum, covered in dust, squeezed in the corner, laughing. There was no way he could have moved the heavy drum, gotten behind it, and then placed it back again. I had to pull him up from above because there was no space to pull him out from the side. That night, he began screaming in his sleep, violently, eyes wide open, staring at the bedroom door and shrieking as if something was standing right there. We recited verses, blew over him, calmed him down, and when we turned the lights off again, he screamed a second time, but this time he wasn't looking at the door. He was looking above me, screaming like something was right over my head. The movement activated the sensor light even though none of us had moved from the bed. That lamp only turned on when someone physically walked past it, yet it blinked on by itself. We turned on all the lights again, recited verses, soothed him, and finally he slept. For several days he remained scared until my mother-in-law prayed over water and told us to give it to him and wipe him with it. Alhamdulillah, he settled after about 10 to 15 days. We stopped letting him near the basement after that. Months later, after my daughter was born, another incident occurred. One night, I was putting my son to sleep while my husband took my fussy baby upstairs to his mother. My son had a crawling teddy bear toy, the kind you press a button and it crawls with music. It only worked when the button was pressed. I put my son to bed and stepped out of the room, and suddenly, the teddy bear started crawling by itself. It would crawl, stop, then crawl again, exactly like someone was pressing the button each time. I froze. I couldn't leave the room with my child because the only path to the door was right past the crawling toy. Terrified, I called my husband, asking him to come downstairs. At first, he thought I was just calling him back casually. When I called again more firmly, he understood it was serious and rushed down. And when I heard the main door open, the teddy bear stopped moving. We put it in the basement and refused to bring it back upstairs. Another day, we found an old remote control car that belonged to my husband when he was a child. We tried putting new batteries in the car and the remote, but it didn't work at all. My husband even tried himself. Nothing. Later, while he was walking toward me in the kitchen, the same car suddenly came to life and began following him. He didn't see it, but I did. It drove right behind him until he stopped. When he stopped, the car stopped. He turned, saw it still, then walked again, and the car started moving again. He immediately picked it up and put it back in the basement. But the worst incident happened in December 2019. The night my mother passed away in India. I couldn't travel because of the COVID lockdown. I was emotionally shattered. That night, after crying, I lay down with my children while my husband rested in the living room. Suddenly, from the kitchen, I heard the sound of breaking glass, loud, even though every single glass and plate was stored inside cupboards. Nothing was outside. I ignored it, thinking maybe something shifted inside a cabinet. Then I heard footsteps, clear, slow footsteps on our wooden floor, walking from the kitchen toward the living room. I assumed it was my husband checking the noise, but when I turned, I saw him lying there on the sofa, exactly where he had been. The footsteps reached him, and then a glass placed on the side table next to him fell. Then the footsteps walked back toward the kitchen. I heard it all. I saw him lying there the whole time, but my mind was so overwhelmed with grief that I couldn't process what was happening. A few days later, when I finally asked him, he confirmed everything: the sound in the kitchen, the footsteps coming to him, and the glass being pushed off the table by something unseen. Apart from these major events, small things kept happening all the time. Objects disappearing and reappearing, toys acting strange, a general feeling of being watched. The last incident happened just before we moved out. We had already packed most of our things. I turned around while standing near the wardrobe and saw one of the kids' big teddy bears lying on the floor.
Its arms were positioned like a clock showing 12:30, one arm up, one arm down. As I turned, I saw with my own eyes the arm that was pointing up slowly move down on its own. I froze. I thought maybe I imagined it because I turned too quickly, but when I looked at my husband, he was staring at it too, horrified. He asked me, "Did you see what I saw?" I said, "Yes, the arm moved." He nodded. It moved. That was the moment we both understood whatever was happening was not related to toys. It was the house. Something in that house liked toys, played with them, and interacted through them. But the toys weren't the source. That was our experience in that home. Only God knows what was there.